Well, we might as well start the meeting. I think everyone, is in attendance. Tom got a hold of me and told me that, for this month as well as next month, he's going to be traveling, so he's going to be missing the meeting. And as I indicated before, that, Eric is, no longer with us, maybe part-time, but I don't know if he'll be working with the ordinance committee during that part-time basis or not. And so thankfully we have Chris and Doug to help us out until, things get stabilized in regards to the development office. I just want to make you aware, the committee aware, that the status of the different items that we have acted on and for the town board meeting on February 8th, the public hearing is being held on the swimming pools for the RLD. Hopefully there's no problem with that, because I haven't heard any complaints from anybody. I've heard, 3 or 4 responses that they didn't see there was any problem with what we have. And this is where you come into play on it, Chris, is on the lighting and the manufactured homes. I'm not exactly sure, even though I talked to Eric about a week or so ago, what the status is in regards to those as we move through the process. As far as I think all of the both of them have gone through the various committees, whether it be the county, the zoning, the planning, the ECB, and so on. And I think even Nadler has looked at them, but I'm not really sure on that. Do you have any idea, Chris?
I just opened the tracker that Eric had on the network. First time I'm seeing it, so I don't know.
Okay. And the one thing that, we discussed in past meetings is on the pavers. And I'd like to move forward to that if we could and decide what we're going to do with that. The thought was possibly instead of making it a complete code, that we would add it to the policy of the design standards, but definitely have the necessary definitions for what is required in order to have them. So I'm just putting that out there for the committee to voice their thoughts on that.
So what are we talking about, like pervious pavers?
Yes.
It's not to be. So we have a section of code that defines structures, and they're included in that definition as far as for setbacks and everything. So if anything, that would have to be modified. But as far as environmentally, pervious pavers have quite a bit of maintenance to them, even though like some of them have grass. Like the ones that have grass in them, that would be fine as far as the water would go through the grass portion because it's soil and everything. But there's a lot of other ones that have pervious pavers where they say it goes through the stone, through the rock. Those require quite a bit of maintenance. Every year or two, you have to vacuum them out, clean them out and stuff like that. So after a year or two, unless you do that, they become just like regular pavement. Same with, like they say, like gravel driveways are pervious. They are for maybe a year or two, but after you compact crushed stone, number 2 crusher run, it's solid. There's no absorption through them.
Yeah, Chris, what we were thinking about is obviously I think it's come before the ZBA. John brought it to our attention. I've seen it with the planning board that an applicant comes in and in order to meet his or her stormwater management obligation, they say, well, we're going to put some permeable pavers in. And everybody says, yeah, that sounds good. And but there is really no definitive way of determining what that paver is going to be made up of, and how it's going to be designed, how it's going to function, how it's going to be maintained. So I think what Gary was referring to is the possibility, and I was putting myself to sleep last night by reading the site design manual. There is a section we have in there on driveways, and I don't see why we couldn't maybe just add some more narrative as to addressing the permeable porous pavements, and then in the detail section have a detail of what it would look like in terms of subgrade, subbase, the paver itself, or the
I'm just saying, like for like a driveway for residential, I understand I could as code enforcement for commercial projects, you have to maintain your stormwater infrastructure and everything like that. And
Right.
there's inspection processes and everything like that. And a means, because there's a long-term maintenance agreements and stuff like that. For private residential, there will be no follow-up. There'll be no making sure they are maintaining it and stuff. So after a year, they have a sealing company in, they seal their pavement. They got through planning board and everything like that, and kind of said and done.
Is it something
What I
we
could see is,
go ahead.
sorry. What I could see is, I would just say if they use like the pavers that have open areas and have grass in them, just take 50% of the coverage away from the pavers and stuff, because it's grass and will absorb it and stuff like that. And you're never worried about them paving over and stuff, because grass is going to absorb. And then say 50% of the driveway is the pavers, then 50% is still grass.
The reality of the situation is that permeable pavers, regardless of the claim that they need to be maintained with frequency, there's still a better alternative than a solid poured concrete sidewalk or a solid poured concrete driveway. And the percentage of lot coverage associated with generally the driveways or the sidewalks, we're talking about a few percentage points here. And I think what we want to do as a town is to encourage the use of environmentally friendly products as opposed to products that have no permeability whatsoever. And generally speaking, those permeable pavers that you're talking about a few years, not 1 year, where the pavers become less permeable. And generally speaking, it's moss that grows between the joints that might impact the permeability of these pavers. And generally speaking, most people using them don't like the moss in between the pavers, and they'll maintain them by getting rid of that moss. And so I think that as a town, we want to encourage the use of these products as opposed to discouraging them. And if we provide no incentive for the community to implement these, then we're not going to be encouraging them to use them. They'll continue to use poured concrete and or solid asphalt. So there's my 2 cents on it.
But it's all has to do with the residential lake district, because the other places don't have lot coverage, they just have building coverage.
I would jump in and say that we do need to incentivize this. And the only thing that you guys have sort of said, but you haven't said directly, is that we bear the responsibility of being custodians of the lake. And the theme of what these are supposed to do is good. The devil is in the details. And I agree with what you're saying, Chris, that somebody can come in with good faith and say they're doing this or that. That lights it up for us, and on the ZBA. We like hearing that. Now, whether or not it's going to be, continued at the level we'd like thereafter, not sure. But it's, I guess part of this is good faith. But I think as custodians of the lake, we need to have an incentive or have something where people are more inclined to do this. And John spoke to this too. Well, it's not perfect. And when this system can break down, it's better than the alternative of the old style, pavers. That's my 2 cents.
How is it better than the alternative if after a couple of years the whole thing is no longer pervious?
Because Terry, you have
over the long haul, it's not good.
You have to trust in the community and trust in the people that generally speaking, people that are living along the lake in the residential lakefront district are very good custodians of and very good stewards of the lake. It is rare, I believe, that you have someone living in the RLD that has no care for the lake. Otherwise, they wouldn't be living there to begin with. That's generally what motivates people to move to those areas. And I think we have to trust the community is going to do the right thing. We can't make ordinances and laws because we think that there could be a violator or two of this. What we need to do is make it user-friendly and custodial friendly for the majority of the people that are going to be living along the lake.
Okay, so why not take what Chris was saying, use the, the pavers that incorporate grass and just adopt that?
Because most people are not going to want those types of pavers in their driveway or on their sidewalks. Those types of pavers are very maintenance heavy, and I don't think they're very aesthetically pleasing for use as a driveway or a sidewalk. People use those as a last alternative.
Does anybody currently have the kind of pavers you're talking about? And you've witnessed them vacuuming them out every year? Or have you seen anything like that?
Myself, personally?
Yeah.
I had those pavers, and I had to go before the Zoning Board of Appeals to install a swimming pool and a patio around the swimming pool. And one of the conditions of the approval was that I use permeable pavers. And I have to say that it cost me nearly $20,000 to pull out the old pavers and install permeable pavers to begin with. So I can speak to the use of those directly.
Do you find the maintenance to be a problem, John, or what's your
No,
experience?
I didn't. And I had those for about 5 years before I moved from the property. And what I would find was that moss would grow in between the joints periodically, and you'd have to go and scrape that out, and the pavers would work as good. And the reason, one of the other reasons why I installed those is because I had low areas around the perimeter of the house where there was a concern of water infiltration into the house. And I got to tell you, those things worked tremendously. They absorbed the water and dissipated the water in very short order. So I am a very strong supporter of those myself. I think that we ought to be encouraging people to use these. And I want to note also, on the last 3 zoning board meetings that we've had people come before the zoning board for lot coverage issues. And the Environmental Conservation Board has recommended that these people use permeable pavers as a solution to the lot coverage.
But what's their level of understanding of the long-term use of pavers? The people on the Environmental Conservation Board, they may not be aware of what Chris was just telling us earlier. So now you say you have to get down and scrape out the moss. Is that something that I mean, it must be labor intensive or difficult to do? Or
no, it's actually, you can do it with a hose, and you spray the pavers with a hose, and you can get this moss out. That's one way of doing it. A heavy broom is another way of doing it. And then they have steel scrapers that you have long handles on that you can use as well. But it's not as if when the moss grows between the joints that it is very difficult to remove. It's just sweeping and just washing with a hose. And those are things that people are going to do, generally speaking, anyways, because they're going to live on these patios or live on these sidewalks and use them regularly. So it's maintenance that people normally would do generally anyways, if they're good caretakers of their homes.
Now, John, since you already have them, just to help me understand, if you get moss, you probably get weeds too, right?
You do.
And what is there a special foundation you have to use for the pavers versus asphalt or concrete?
Generally speaking, they use run of crusher underneath the pavers directly, or a fine sand directly underneath the pavers, so that you can level the sub base in order to install the pavers.
Yeah, so the pavers have
It has to be porous.
a cleaned washed stone and sand, like he's saying, so that the water can penetrate. And then under the sand, there's like a mirify, a filter fabric. And then under that, there's stone, washed stone, so that the water has a place to like go to. Like during a heavy rain, the water will all go through, sit in the washed stone, and then slowly get absorbed into the ground. It's quite a system.
Now, I think, Terry, you're asking good questions, and I think this is a great, this works great in the short term. In the long term, like you and John suggested, we have to rely on the goodwill of the homeowner to do the right thing. And because of personal pride and the investment already you have in something, we're hoping that that will happen. But short term, I think this is dynamite. It's terrific. Long term, time will tell whether people do this. But I don't think that because we can't control the long term, we should not get involved. I think just the opposite. I think we need to promote this. I think this is good for the lake. And in the end, a lot of the people on the lake that are going with McMansions or whatever they're doing, the cost for them is something that they can bear. I wouldn't suggest that this would work, all through the town, but in the lake area, I think this is really appropriate.
I mean, the only place it would really mean anything too, because it's the residential lake district, is the lot coverage and stuff like that. And it is a good idea. It's just the question is, so setbacks and stuff, do we still, like the setback from the lake has to be 60 feet or something like that? Since they're pervious, are we reducing the setbacks? Are we just promoting this as part of lot coverage?
That's a good policy question.
My response to that is, I don't think we are changing or asking to change any setback requirements. We're just using the pavers, permeable pavers, as an alternative to hard asphalt or solid concrete.
So that would probably be an easy fix in the code, because the only place that it kind of mentions it is in our definitions of structure. So we could modify just that easy definition stating that pervious pavers are considered structures, but something like utilizing the lot coverage, you can subtract stuff based on the manufacturer's permeability or something like that compared to vegetation. That's what I'm wondering, is how I exactly would modify or write a rule to go back to you guys to review, kind of thing.
And that would be the incentive, because if we provide that, then we are incentivizing.
But
Yeah,
it's,
so
I think-
you still have to keep, sorry.
That's okay. I might have spoken over you. I apologize. But I think to your point, and I think that's a very good point. I've looked at this, but it's been a while since I did. I think that under the definitions, it talks about pavers as being a structure. And I think a simple modification of that definition by saying that permeable pavers will be allowed as a substitution for driveways or sidewalks and not be included in lot coverage calculation might be a simple way to address it.
But that's the thing, we still have to have them considered structures for the setback requirements. So what I'm saying is we have to modify it so it's worded correctly. So it's part of structures, but shall not, but as far as lot coverage, shall not be considered in lot coverage based on the manufacturer's permeability ratings or something like that. I don't know how to word it, kind of thing. That's what I'm wondering.
so on that, Chris, are you talking about the setback, like 60, changing it to a different thing for pavers?
No, what I'm saying is we have to keep the pavers as part of our code as far as the definition of structures,
I
but
agree with that.
incentivize, like you're talking, to not be considered part of, or when you're doing your calculations for lot coverage, if a manufacturer says a permeable paver is equivalent to 50% of what grass would be, then you're allowed to use that in part of your calculations for lot coverage. So that's what I'm saying. I don't know how to word, because the definition should stay, so we make sure they're still part of setbacks, driveway setbacks from the property line, structure setbacks from the lake and stuff like that, but still modify it so you can use that and incentivize the fact that they do absorb water and stuff like that. So we'd have to look at what the definition says and then maybe add a definition for pervious pavement or modify the definition for structure to say that pervious pavement shall be considered a structure, but shall not be utilized for calculations of lot coverage or something like that.
Well, and
You
to
should
put it
write that
to
down
put it
quickly.
in, I'm sorry. To put it in practice, we're always dealing, if you remember the term pre-existing nonconformity. That's what our lives are all about in this district, what we deal with all the time. And then you come down to, is the variance significant, what they're asking for? And if they can use these pavers, these permit, then perhaps the application will not be significant, will not be huge. It will reduce the scope. So there's a little bit of gamesmanship in terms of how all this works for the greater good. And I think that if we can, if people are starting to get the word that you'll be received better by the ZBA if you are addressing environmental concerns and doing this. I hope I made myself clear.
One of the things Eric was very good at helping us with was when we came up with a concept and an idea like this, and I guess, Chris, this is directed to you more than anyone, he'd go back and take a look at the language and come back to this group and make a suggestion how we could modify the language to conform to our intent. So my question is that something you think you could do for us, or?
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out, like, I just shared my screen with the definition of structure. And the big thing was, it says sidewalks and impervious or substantially impervious surfaces. We need to maybe add a sentence that says, it shall be the determination of the planning board what is pervious and what is impervious, or the applicant shall make application with manufacturer's information on what percentage of it is considered pervious in calculation of lot coverage or something like that. It's like some things might be 25% lot coverage, some might be 50%, some might be 75. I guess it's really a job by job thing when they make application of what's lot coverage kind of thing.
So Chris,
Yeah.
I was going to say what John said. Do you feel comfortable that you have an idea of what the committee's looking at, that you could go back and draft something up and bring it back at the next meeting on March 1st?
I'd hope I could. Maybe I'll have a couple different iterations of it, and maybe we modify structure and then add a definition of pervious or something like that, or maybe something in the site plan approval process for lot coverage, because there's a definition for lot coverage and building coverage. So maybe we just add something in that, just change two definitions.
Hey, Chris,
But then
Chris, this isn't meant as a slight at all, but I just want to say that, we do have an agreement with Eric to work part-time. I mean, if.
It's not a slight at all, however you want to work it.
Well, no, I'm just saying that, if this group wanted to, we did approve it, excuse me, our last meeting, part-time position for Eric and also for Sam to continue working, nights or weekends up to a certain number of dollars per month. We could ask him to take a shot at it also if you want. I mean, Gary, that's something you could do if you want to. Just pointing it out, that's all.
Right.
Not recommending it, just.
Let me just follow up on that real quick for a quick second. So primarily, Eric is, busy with his new full-time position during the day. And so what he envisions is being able to help us out a little bit in the off hours, probably mostly finishing up the comprehensive plan. But if there was something specific that we wanted to send to ask him to work on, he could certainly do that. But I anticipate that it's going to be more geared towards the comprehensive plan from a follow-up conversation with him as he just kind of concludes his service.
So you have no problem with us asking Chris to look at it then under the circumstances and come back
No.
with the information that he was, heard today from the committee members.
Yeah, that's fine. Chris can certainly come up with a draft. Obviously, we're going to have to send it over to Chris Nadler and
Right.
get the legalese aspect and all that stuff down the road. But at least to get something started, that sounds good.
Okay.
So maybe it's just a quick change of definition of structure and lot coverage. Lot coverage to not include pervious or based on calculations or manufacturer recommendation, then modify structure or keep structure the same for setbacks and everything like that, and just modify lot coverage.
So what you're saying, Chris, is if somebody wanted, let's just say 1,000 square feet, and the manufacturer says that these things are 50% pervious, we would only count 500 square feet against the lot coverage.
Yeah, I mean, it based on what the planning board and the engineer submits to the planning board for
Right.
approvals and stuff like that. Yeah, or in our determination before it gets to planning board, we'll gather the documents from the applicant to say, okay, yeah, we understand and we agree with your interpretation of what the permeability of the structure is, and move it on, kind of thing for you guys.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
So is there any other questions the committee members want to ask or mention to Chris before we get off this topic?
No,
for the time being?
yeah, I go back to where we started. I guess we were talking originally about what the design of a porous pavement would be and how it would be constructed and what we would require. I guess through the course of the discussions this morning, I guess what we're looking at is if an applicant either opts to or is required to provide permeable pavement, that the engineer for that applicant submit a design as to how that would be constructed. And then through the course of the review, especially MRBs, they could look at that design to see if it's applicable to that particular property in terms of the geotech, the conditions of the soils and all that, to determine if it'll work. And then that would be part of that review and be required to be shown on the plan. And then I guess the last item could be, Chris, we could have them put on the plan that the maintenance of this system is the responsibility of the property owner. It's not something you're going to be out there every year checking to see if it's being maintained, but at least it does put an onus on the
It does,
the
and
applicant.
I'm just saying, you know the situation. There's no way I'm going on private property
no.
without warrants and stuff. So it'll promote it, but as far as following up, there's not much I could do, kind of thing.
No.
And like we've all been saying this morning, I think there's certainly a value in providing the porous pavement. And I think if we can prove that to the applicant, it makes it more palatable to him in terms of wanting to do it. I see there's advantages in terms of runoff. If you have permeable pavement, you don't have as much sheet flow, so it may not be sheet flowing into your garage or down over your bank and causing erosion. So, I mean, there are ways of promoting it more than just the environmental aspects of it. There's also a practical aspect of controlling runoff. So
And we've had a lot of creative applicants in the past use it. I mean, we have the Sands, if you can see this little driveway here, they actually did it to the middle of the driveway was all grass and everything. I mean, they're really good at driving on the pavement on this one, but we have other ones too that have worked as well.
yeah, and I take back what I first said about maybe putting a standard in our design manual. I think we ought to leave it up to the creativity of the
Just like
applicant and their engineer,
can
and
see all
just
these
make sure that
photos.
we approve it.
Because there's tons of different options out there. We can't really pigeonhole them into one thing.
And it has evolved, over the last 10 years quite a bit. It used to be, it was a very simple process, but now there's so many different options that, again, we could leave it up to the applicant. All right, thanks.
You're all set then, Chris?
Oh, yep, revision
Okay.
of the definition of lot coverage to include permeable pavement and calculations by the engineer and applicant.
Okay.
I'll make it sound better than that though.
Okay. Now, you were able to bring it back at the March 1st meeting, Chris, and let us know what you've come up with?
Yep.
Okay. Can we move on now, Chris, to the other two items that have here that you worked on? And I think they're pretty well taken care of. I'm not exactly sure. Might have to follow up on that, and I can come in with you and check on it. Is on the manufactured homes, which you spoke to us about, and also the lighting as far as I know, I think they have made it through all the necessary, places that they need to, all the different committees. I'm not exactly sure based on the information I have. Maybe you have better information than I do, that if it's made it through to Chris Nadler for his review.
I just shared my screen. It says pools in the RLD is 1221 town board. And then manufactured home is 215 town board. Nadler looked at both of these here and here.
So
Okay, so
let's just talk about that a second. So I believe, and that's, I was just grabbing my binder because my computer is not connected to the network for some reason at the moment. But I believe on the pool one, I believe on December 21st, we set the public hearing for February the 8th for the pool. So I think that's coming up this February for the public hearing for the pool one. And then I think the next one down, the manufactured homes, I believe the intent there was to, Eric was planning to write a resolution to set a public hearing at the February 8th meeting for the March 15th meeting. But I don't think that has been done. And I don't know that we have the draft local law back yet or not. I got to look into that. I'm just going to confirm for you real quick on that.
Yeah, his tracker says manufactured homes town board number 1 is 215.
Yeah, there is no 215.
yeah, it went to February 8th instead. We certainly could move that to the March meeting for the town board to establish a public hearing.
Yeah, so resolution 276, which was 2020-276, which was passed by the town board on December the 21st, set a public hearing for the February 8th meeting on a text code amendment to Town Code Chapter 22021, allow amend regulations on swimming pools and the seeker portion. So that one's set for this February 8th meeting, the public hearing. And then hopefully we'll be able to take action at that meeting.
So you're saying, Doug, that for it to go before the town board for the March meeting for both the lighting and the manufactured homes, establish a public hearing for the April meeting?
I mean, the deadline for resolutions was last Friday, so I don't know if the resolution is already done or not.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would have to be the March.
Okay.
Who would have written that resolution?
Eric may have already done it. I just haven't had a chance to go through that folder yet. So.
Oh, okay.
Since you worked on both of them, Chris, was there any questions you had on them? Probably not. You were probably pretty well taken care of it, right?
Yeah, you guys have discussed them a bunch of times and stuff like that. We were going to go farther in the manufactured home, but I think you guys settled on just something to fix our code how it is kind of right now, so we don't go into other things. And then the lighting, we reviewed for quite a while. But as far as resolutions, I've never been part of that process. So yeah, Doug, whatever you need me to do kind of thing.
Okay. Now, the next thing that I have is I met with Doug a week or two ago, and he's got a couple different items that, he would like to bring before the committee to start looking at. And so I'll turn it over to you, Doug, if you don't mind, and you can make your presentation on them.
Well, I don't really have a presentation per se, just to make you aware. So there are two things that are coming at you or three things really, two of which I think are probably going to be a little bit time consuming for you. It's probably going to take a couple of meetings. One is I've been working with our Parks and Rec committee, and they're, I think, putting the finishing touches on what is basically a complete rewrite of the Parks and Rec section of Town Code. So that'll be coming towards you and provide some input, obviously, before that makes its way to the town board. That's very much what I would call a working draft right now. It's a red line version of the existing code so that you can see the differences, those sorts of things. We'll have to walk through that. And that very well may take more than one meeting. Another one that's a big one that is going to be, I think, time consuming, I think it's going to be many meetings, is the form-based code for Uptown. That's coming. Bergman Associates is working through that with us, but that's going to insert a whole new section of town code for form-based codes. And so I'm hoping that we can coordinate something and maybe have Bergman present that and kind of walk through. I don't know if anybody's been part of any of those meetings or not, but there's a lot to that. And then there's the third one. It probably will take a meeting, maybe two. One of our town board members has done a rewrite of the town's ethics policy, the ethics section of the town code. And so that's the third one. So those three in particular, I think, are probably going to take some time. I would say the first one probably coming at you is the Parks and Rec particular one. So that's probably the first one I would say that would make its way to you.
Doug, for my edification, could you explain a little bit what you mean by form-based code?
Sure. So there's two types of zoning. There's Euclidean zoning, which is the traditional zoning that we deal with, where it's all based on setbacks. It's based on, you have to have so much of a setback. You can't exceed that in terms of, like for instance, you can't be any closer than 15 feet to the side property line, for instance. So that would be like a Euclidean zoning type thing. Form-based codes is you are designing the code for a specific area for the future build out of what it would look like. So using that same analogy, instead of saying you can't be any closer to the property line than 15 feet, you may say you have to start the building at 5 feet from the property line because we want everything to have a certain kind of common theme or look, or it's designed more towards aesthetics than the actual zoning per se. So it really kind of is a complete shift in the way that we would do traditional zoning. And it's more geared towards the future build out and the look of the area.
So what I'm hearing you say in summary, and I appreciate that explanation, that was very good, thank you, is that we develop codes to incentivize developers or commercial owners to develop particular areas in a way that we want to see it developed.
Correct. So with the Uptown area in particular, the very first thing that we did is we did the Uptown feasibility study. We went through that whole process, probably almost 2 years. And we said, okay, this is what we want this area. This is kind of the idea of what this area would look like when it's built out. So the first phase of that's been done. That's all set. However, guess what? Our town code doesn't allow us to build what we said we'd like to see. So now this next step is going through and making changes, and form-based code is the recommendation, the most logical way to do that, of here's the concepts, here's the types of things, here's the details that you get into, and then build it out in that direction.
Good, thank you.
Mm-hmm. But there's going to be a lot to that. Just so many different components to that. That's why I say I think it's going to take some time, and I don't think we should rush that. Yes, I know there's developers that are chomping at the bit, kind of waiting for us, and we kind of are in this in-between phase right now where we have developers that come in. Like for instance, we've got a business. I'll tell you one. Kentucky Fried Chicken just recently reached out to us, and they're interested in going into an area of Uptown, but they can't do what they would like to do to build towards the Uptown plan based on our current code. So we're in this weird kind of phase right now that we're going to have to either utilize, like for instance, the mixed use overlay and utilize that process, or maybe we advocate on behalf of variances, those types of things as we work through that process. Like for instance, there's that rule about 100-foot setback from 332, and that's a big one. And basically the Uptown plan says, no, you don't want to have buildings be 100 feet from 332. You actually want them to be all the way up closer to the sidewalk and closer to 332. So that's a huge shift. So those types of things. But the form-based code is it really is designed to give a little bit more flexibility in terms of for the developer to get creative in what's going to work in the marketplace and work for them, while also having a common, basically, theme or aesthetic on what we would see and what we would see the build out to be. So there's going to be a lot to really work through with that.
The common theme meaning architecturally, I mean, there's going to be a similarity.
Mhm.
I've sat in on a lot of those meetings, and you get into issues like transparency, the windows, the number of windows, it touches a lot of different areas, and it's a completely different way of thinking than the way we've approached zoning in the past. In developing that code, does the county or the state, concerning 332, can we just do that, or do we have to get buy-in from the state, from the county? I mean, a county has some rules about within 500 feet of a county road and stuff like that.
So we, two things. So remember, that was actually a grant that we received to actually do that. And as part of, and that was a grant from the Genesee Transportation Council. And one of the requirements as we work through that whole feasibility study in the process is the New York State Department of Transportation had to be involved with that. And so they had actually a representative at every single one of our meetings as we work through that whole feasibility process. And then they provided comment before we actually had adopted the Uptown feasibility study. So they're involved, but they don't get the final say. It's actually a local home rule because it's a municipality. Ultimately, the town board gets to make that decision. But it is also subject to the county planning board, for instance. So we'll have to present it to the county planning board, just like we do any other land use regulations, those sorts of things, the 239. And I'm sure they'll provide comment and feedback to us.
Okay, thanks, Doug. And no, I didn't remember that. Sometimes they have trouble with last week, so.
Hey, Doug, how would form-based zoning compare to incentive zoning? Is it one and the same, or is there a difference?
No, much different. So basically with form-based code, so let's just start the other way. So with incentive zoning, right, you're looking at a specific parcel and you're saying, okay, in exchange for this service that this developer is going to provide, or this, whatever it is that they're going to provide to the community, then the town is going to allow them to construct this that otherwise they may not be able to construct under the current zoning. So it's very specific to a property. Form-based code is a much broader geographic area. So it encompasses many, many parcels. So for the Uptown form-based code, we're talking about realistically 3 different regions. You're talking about the 332 corridor. You're talking about the area just off of the 332 corridor, kind of the access road areas going all the way over to the airport. And then it kind of transitions to another area as you get into more of the residential and rural type, as you get closer over to, for instance, Canandaigua Academy. So it's a huge area. It's not specific to a parcel.
Okay, so they both promote creativity on the applicant's part, but one regarding a specific site, the other an area or a zone. Okay,
Yep.
Thank you.
Doug,
In the
on my
case-
last meeting's minutes here, maybe some of the committee members could help me out. I had written down Fallbrook parking. What's that in reference to? Do you have any idea?
Fallbrook parking? Fallbrook Park or parking?
Well, maybe Fallbrook Park. I don't know about on zoning.
Size of the lots?
Well, that might be a manufacturer. Chris, do we have anything with Fallbrook Park lately?
We have something called on-street parking in the CH 195 in his list. That's the only thing I can see for parking.
I don't know. We don't have anything relative specifically to Fallbrook Park lately, do we? I mean, I know we've had some issues over the past, but
Not really. I don't believe so.
Okay. But I didn't know I had that written down. I know Eric mentioned it, at the last meeting apparently, because that's where I wrote it down. Is there anything
I know
else
they
that
were
you'd like
talking
to
about-
add, Doug?
no, the only other thing, I was just getting a series of alerts of we're supposed to get 12 inches of snow by Wednesday morning, so everyone be safe. So
Yeah.
Hey Doug, while we got you, the conservation subdivision, I know Barb Johnson was working on that before the first of the year and seemed like we were picking up speed and then all of a sudden it sort of petered out. So where's that stand?
That's a great question, Chuck, and that's actually on my follow-up list for today is to touch base with Barb Johnson to see where things are at. I think one of the things I believe that we were waiting on for her is just kind of to finish up. I thought we were pretty close to them proposing some languages, maybe some changes for us to meet and follow up with that, and I haven't seen those yet. So
Okay.
it's on my pretty lengthy list for this morning. So
My list was much shorter.
I used to work for a guy that said there's 24 hours in every day, Doug, so.
thanks, Terry.
Unfortunately, Doug's using all of them and he needs 26.
Yeah,
Well, we've covered quite a few items this morning. You know, I think it's been pretty productive, the meeting today. We're, getting closer to 10, but I mean, it's still got 10 minutes left. Is there anything else that any committee member would like to bring up, before we adjourn?
I wrote a code for Bristol. They're really hot on accessory dwelling units because the retired community, people have lots of acreage there and they want to be able to build a secondary dwelling on the property, smaller than the first, share utilities and stuff. So I don't know if that's something you guys want to look at sometime in the future. I do have a model code written.
oh, we'll be all ready for it if it comes up.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're all going to need a place to live. Us old people.
Yeah, I guess there's a lot of things going on with retirees. There's a couple classes I'm going to that just kind of spell out the cost of living and cost of building new homes these days. And
Mhm.
you can't touch building a new home for under like a 200 grand. And that's not really what people are looking to do a lot of times. They're looking to downsize and build smaller units and stuff. So I don't know.
Pallets and tar paper, Chris.
Yeah.
Well, if there's not anything else.
Right now.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I've got one, Gary, that I'll throw out there and see what the sentiment of the group is. I'm wondering if we can, or if there would be some modification of the size of accessory structures dependent on the size of the lot.
They did just change that.
We did just change that?
Yeah.
Me.
Yeah. 220-9. I think they allowed more in the SCR and stuff like that. And then, oh shoot.
So let me just expand that a little bit and ask this question. Would there be any consideration for increasing the size of accessory structures on lakefront dependent on size of the lakefront?
Okay, so yeah, we have a section of our code 220-9 that pretty much deals with all the other zoning districts except for the RLD.
Okay.
So the RLD has their own specific accessory structure rules. So yeah.
So I think if I'm not mistaken, Chris, you can kind of clarify or help me if I'm wrong, but right now we're limited to 100 square foot accessory structure, regardless of the size of the lot. And I think that that is true on the lakefront also, regardless of the size of the lot. So I'm wondering if that could be modified dependent on the size of the lot.
You're the ordinance committee, so right now it says you have one accessory building not to exceed 100 square feet and 10 feet in height, and then it has a whole bunch of exceptions about if the house is on this side, if the house is on that side, if the lakefront is divided by a street, and all these different things like that. And then you're allowed one detached private garage no taller than 16 feet. So a detached garage in the town is up to 900 square feet. So you're allowed an attached garage, a detached private garage no taller than 16 feet, 900 square feet, and 100 square feet accessory building.
But John, what you're really asking is a political question is, can you change the code? Well, of course, the code could be changed. That would ultimately be up to the town board after a series of public hearings and getting public input, those sorts of things. Whether or not the ordinance committee wants to recommend that change to the town board, I mean, that's really up for you guys to talk about that and,
Right.
discuss that. So.
Anything else from any other committee members before we adjourn? Because a
Just
lot of times
just to expand that a little bit,
somebody else
Garrett,
comes on. Pardon?
if you don't mind me expanding on that a little bit. So down at the lakefront of some of these homes, and as an example, if people have less than 100 lineal feet of lakefront, they're only allowed to put in a dock and a hoist that accommodates one boat. If they have more than 100 lineal feet of lakefront, they're allowed to put in a dock and a hoist that can accommodate up to 2 boats. And then I think it graduates even a little bit more from there, but you have to have a lot of lineal footage of lakefront to do that.
Yeah, so I apologize for interrupting. That's actually the Uniform Docks and Mooring Code. And that's a universal code adopted by all the jurisdictions around the entire lake.
Yes.
So changing that would actually probably require changing something at the state level.
No, I'm not talking about changing that. I'm using that as the example that based on the amount of lakefront you had, you're able to install different size dock accommodations. So my point is that, if a person has 100 lineal feet of lakefront, maybe they're limited to a 100-foot accessory structure on the lake. If a person has 100 feet, maybe they're allowed, something greater than that, maybe a 200-foot structure. And I just wanted to see if there was any sentiment on this committee to see if that is something we wanted to take a look at, because that does come up once in a while also.
They should put it on the list with the other, that list that Chris had earlier there.
And if you want to draft up some sort of concept about how much size and how much frontage and stuff and how different big size buildings and stuff.
But I mean, there are other items on that list already.
Yep.
I don't know. Are they being attacked in that order as you go down that list?
No, there wasn't any said on it, but it was, the ones that were suggested to begin with, are at the top of the list naturally as you work your way down and thought of other ones.
And you've got those other ones coming at you also.
Yeah.
You've got those other ones coming at you. So I think one of the things that you guys have to keep in mind too, as you think about changes like that, right? I think one of the reasons why there are restrictions in place relative to those accessory structures was questions relative to once you get bigger than that, do people put bathrooms, those sorts of things? Is that good for the lake or not? If they're not on a sewer, right? So you have those types of things. And then from a size and height perspective, the views from farther up the hillside. And I know that's quite controversial, and I've been at the center of a lot of those discussions where I'm getting it from both sides. So those are obviously all those types of things you guys have to think about if you get to a point where you start to address those items. So.
Is there anything else any committee member wants to bring up before we adjourn?
How about the zombie home, and what was the other issue we were looking at? Maybe I'm behind the 8 ball on those. Did they go through the protocol of the
Gary, I think
hearings?
with zombie homes, we decided that there actually is state legislation that was just recently enacted within the last year that there was nothing that we were looking to do at this point.
Okay, so that fell off the list.
And it seems so that the 2 or 3 that were creating problems have pretty well taken care of it by now too. So that helped the cause.
And
the one on Wells Curtis Road has a sign in front that says under contract. The guy's been working on the house inside and outside since, I don't know, November or so. It appears that the house is going to be sold, and he kept the lawn mowed during the later part of the fall. So It appears
they've
that one may not be a thorn in our side.
No, they're replacing
Chris?
floors. They're replacing floors. They actually are updating the heating system. They're kind of bringing it back to life right now, which it looks really nice now.
Yeah. Yeah, it says under contract, so somebody's gonna be living there soon, hopefully. It'll make my friend Ed happy.
And the rental home registration, not yet?
That
That's
did
done?
pass.
Okay,
Doug is working on a company to administer it, and we're working on an application for applicants. So right now, holding pattern a little bit.
good, good. All right. Things are moving. Okay. I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Third.
Motion made and seconded. We adjourn and see you on March 1st. And is there no more discussions? We take a vote to adjourn.
All right.
Okay,
Thanks, Chris.
thank you.
Thanks, Doug.
See you before then, but definitely on March 1st. Thank you very much for coming.
Take care.
Yeah.